The rain fell steadily, cold and unrelenting, drenching the city streets in a gloomy gray wash. A woman sat huddled on the cracked pavement, her thin coat soaked through and clinging to her frail frame. She pulled her knees close to her chest, trying to hold on to the small warmth left in her body. Her eyes were fixed on something held tightly in her hands, a faded photograph, creased and worn by time. The edges of the paper were soft from years of being touched and folded, but the image it held was vivid in her memory. In the photo was a young couple, smiling in simpler days, caught in a moment of happiness that seemed so far away now. The woman's heart ached as she stared at the faces. She had once been that girl, full of hope and dreams, but life had not been kind. The world around her was harsh and circumstances had thrown her into a life she never imagined. Homeless, forgotten, invisible to most. She glanced up briefly at the passing figures, their umbrellas creating a shield from the rain. No one noticed her, and if they did, they hurried on, unwilling to get involved. She had learned to blend into the background, to become a shadow on the street. But tonight something felt different. There was a weight in the air, a quiet tension she couldn't explain. As the rain soaked deeper into her clothes, she tightened her grip on the photograph. Memories rushed back. The first smile, the whispered promises, the laughter shared beneath a sunlit sky. She remembered his eyes, full of warmth and kindness. But those days had slipped away, like water through her fingers, leaving only the faintest trace behind. Suddenly, the screech of brakes broke the quiet hum of the rain. A sleek black car pulled up beside her, tires splashing through the puddles. The door opened and a man stepped out, his polished shoes clicking against the wet pavement. He wore a tailored suit, the kind only someone with wealth and influence would own. But it wasn't the clothes or the car that made the woman's heart jump. It was the look in his eyes as they found her. His breath caught. His gaze fell on the photograph she held. He recognized it instantly. The girl in the picture was the same woman now sitting before him, fragile and worn but unmistakably her. Shock and disbelief flashed across his face. How had fate brought them to this moment, here on a rainy city street? The man hesitated, unsure if he should speak, afraid to break the fragile silence that surrounded her. Finally he bent down slightly, lowering himself to her level. "Is that you?" he asked softly, his voice barely above the rain. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for answers. For a moment the years melted away and she saw the young man she had loved all those years ago. The one who had promised forever but vanished without a trace. She nodded slowly, unable to find words. He reached out cautiously, his hand trembling as it hovered near hers. "I never stopped looking for you," he said. "I thought I lost you forever." Her heart raced. The pain of abandonment was still raw, but so was the flicker of hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. For the first time in a long time she didn't feel invisible. Someone saw her. Someone remembered. The rain continued to fall, washing over them both, but now it felt less like cold and more like a cleansing. A chance to begin again, to rewrite a story that had once ended too soon. As the man helped her to her feet, a quiet resolve settled between them. This was not just a reunion. It was the first step toward healing, toward reclaiming a life lost to time and hardship. And in that moment, beneath the gray sky and the steady rain, a new chapter quietly began. The man stood beside the woman, rain dripping from his polished coat as he studied her face. She was no longer the young girl from the photo, but the woman before him still held a quiet strength beneath the weariness. He could see it in her eyes, a flicker of something that refused to be extinguished despite years of hardship. The black car idled softly nearby, its lights cutting through the gloom. He glanced back at it, then returned his gaze to her. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently. His voice was steady, but there was a raw edge beneath the calm, a desperate need to understand the years that had passed between them. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the faded photo. For so long she had carried her story in silence, burying the pain deep within. But now, facing the man who once held her heart, the memories spilled out, some sharp and bitter, others tinged with regret. "It wasn't easy," she began quietly. "After we lost touch, everything fell apart. I lost my job, my home. I had no one." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "I tried to survive day by day, but it felt like the world forgot I existed." He listened, each word hitting him like a blow. He had built an empire, surrounded himself with success and luxury, but none of it meant anything if he couldn't help the woman who had once been everything to him. "Why didn't you try to find me?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. There was hurt there, a wound that time hadn't healed. He swallowed hard. "I tried. I looked for you for years. But after so long without any sign, I believed you were gone. I thought maybe you didn't want to be found." Her breath caught. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken regrets and the weight of lost time. The rain continued to fall, but now it felt like a quiet witness to their reunion, washing away the dust of years apart. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I found this recently," he said, handing it to her. It was a letter, old and yellowed, written in his handwriting. She unfolded it carefully, tears blurring the words she had read so many times in her mind. "I never stopped thinking about you," the letter said. "No matter where life took me, you were always with me." Her hands trembled as she held the letter, and for a moment, the years of pain seemed to soften. They were two lost souls finally finding their way back to each other. "I want to help you," he said softly. "Let me give you a place to stay. Let me help you heal." She looked at him, doubt flickering in her eyes. "Why now? After all this time?" He smiled sadly. "Because I never stopped believing there was a reason we crossed paths again." Slowly she nodded. Hope, fragile but real, began to take root in her heart. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone, where she could start over. Together they walked toward the car. He opened the door for her, a small gesture that felt monumental after years of struggle. As she settled into the warmth inside, she looked out at the rain-soaked city, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The man started the engine and the car pulled away from the curb, carrying them both toward a new beginning. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside the car a quiet promise was made, that no one is ever truly lost, and sometimes love finds its way back against all odds. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years she felt the stirrings of hope. And that was enough to keep her moving forward. He drove through the rain-slicked streets, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement like distant stars. She sat quietly beside him, wrapped in a borrowed coat that smelled faintly of leather and warmth, a stark contrast to the coldness she had grown used to. The silence between them was thick, heavy with the weight of years they had lost. Finally, he broke the silence. "Tell me about those days before you disappeared," he said softly, glancing over at her. "I never really understood what happened." She looked out the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. The memories came rushing back, vivid and painful. "After we parted ways, I tried to keep going. I found a job, but it wasn't enough. The bills piled up and then the eviction notice came. I had nowhere to turn. People I thought were friends stopped answering my calls. I felt invisible." Her voice faltered, but she kept going. "The streets were cold. Nights were the worst. I learned to stay hidden to avoid trouble, but sometimes that wasn't enough. I lost faith in people, in myself." He reached out, gently brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "I never stopped hoping you'd be okay, even if I couldn't find you." She swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. "I hated being forgotten." He nodded, understanding more than she knew. "I made mistakes too. I was young and scared. I didn't know how to hold on." For the first time they shared the pain that had shaped their separate paths. The man spoke of his own struggles, the loneliness behind the wealth, the regrets that haunted him in quiet moments. They were two souls scarred by loss but still searching for light. The car slowed to a stop in front of a modest building. It wasn't a mansion or a palace, but a warm place with walls and a door that could close out the storm. He unlocked the door and helped her inside. The room was small but clean, with soft light casting gentle shadows. She sank onto the worn couch, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. For the first time in years she felt safe. Over the next few days he visited often, bringing food, clothes, and a quiet companionship that felt unfamiliar but welcome. They talked for hours, revisiting old memories, piecing together the story of what had been and what might still be. One evening, as the sun set behind the city skyline, he asked the question they both feared. "Can we try again? Not to erase the past but to build something new." She looked into his eyes, searching for the truth beneath the words. "I want to believe in second chances," she said softly, "but I'm afraid of getting hurt again." He took her hands in his. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I'm here now and I'm not going anywhere." Slowly she nodded. The walls around her heart began to crack, allowing hope to seep through. Days turned into weeks. She started looking for work, helped by his connections but encouraged to stand on her own. The world felt different, less threatening, more open. She discovered strength she had forgotten she had. Yet the past was never far behind. Old fears whispered in quiet moments. Would she ever truly belong again? Could she trust love, or was it just a fleeting dream? He was patient, never pushing too hard. He understood the fragility of healing and the power of time. Together they took small steps forward, learning to walk a new path with cautious hope. The city outside bustled with life, but inside their little room, a fragile peace had begun to bloom. The faded photo, once a relic of lost youth, now held a promise that even after years of darkness, light could return. And in that quiet space, two hearts began to beat in rhythm once more, ready to face whatever the future held, side by side. The woman sat quietly in the small room, the soft hum of the city outside filtering through the window. The man watched her, sensing the weight she carried, the years of silence, pain, and unspoken truths. Tonight the air was thick with something neither of them wanted to avoid anymore. She took a deep breath, her hands clasping the faded photo that had brought them together. "There's something I've never told you," she began, her voice trembling but steady. "After you left, things got worse. I wasn't just homeless by accident. There were people I trusted who betrayed me." He leaned forward, the concern in his eyes deepening. "What do you mean?" Tears welled up as she recalled the nights spent hiding from those who pretended to care, only to exploit her desperation. "I thought I could rely on some friends, but they turned their backs. I lost everything, my dignity, my faith in people. Sometimes I felt invisible even to myself." The room grew silent except for the distant sounds of the city. The man's heart ached hearing the truth laid bare. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," he said softly. "I never imagined." She shook her head, wiping a tear away. "It's not your fault. I made choices too, bad choices, out of fear and loneliness. I didn't want you to see that part of me." He reached out, placing a gentle hand on hers. "I want to see everything, the good and the bad. If we're going to rebuild, we need honesty." Her eyes searched his face, searching for judgment but finding none. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe enough to share the darkest parts of her story. As she spoke, the years of pain began to unravel, but so did a quiet strength. She told him about the nights in shelters, the strangers who showed kindness, the moments of hope that kept her going. And how, despite it all, she never stopped remembering him, the boy who once promised forever. He listened intently, the reality of her struggle settling over him like a heavy fog. His world of wealth and privilege had sheltered him, but it had never prepared him for this, the raw, unvarnished truth of survival. I want to help you heal, he said, his voice firm yet tender. Not just with money but by being here. By standing beside you. She nodded slowly, the first genuine smile breaking through her guarded expression. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared that things will go back to how they were, that I'll lose myself again. He squeezed her hand gently. We'll take it one day at a time. Together. The rain outside had stopped, and the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Inside, two hearts, battered but unbroken, began to beat in quiet hope. The woman looked down at the photo again. No longer just a symbol of lost love but a reminder of resilience and the promise of a new beginning. And as the night deepened, so did their bond, forged not just by memories but by the courage to face the future hand in hand. He watched her carefully, seeing the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The past had left its scars, but in that moment he knew this was more than a reunion. It was a crossroads. I want to help you, he said quietly, but I know it's not about money or comfort. It's about trust. Will you let me be part of your life again? She hesitated, the memories of loneliness and betrayal pressing against her hope. I don't know if I can trust so easily anymore, she admitted. But I'm tired of running. That small admission was a victory. He reached out and gently took her hand, warmth spreading between them. We don't have to rush. We'll rebuild slowly. One step at a time. Days turned into weeks. He opened doors she thought were long closed, introducing her to people who could help, offering guidance, but always stepping back to let her find her own strength. She started small, taking on part-time work, relearning how to stand on her own. Each morning was a battle against old fears, but she faced them with growing courage. He was there not as a savior, but as a companion willing to walk beside her through the shadows. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window, she held the worn photograph close. This used to be just a memory, she said softly. Now it feels like a promise. He smiled, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. A promise that no matter what happens we face it together. But healing was never straightforward. Old wounds surfaced, fears of rejection, doubts about her worth, and the haunting question, could love truly survive so much pain? One evening after a long day she broke down, the walls she had built crumbling in tears. I'm scared I'll lose myself again, she whispered. He held her tightly. You won't. I promise I'm not going anywhere. Slowly, trust grew between them, fragile but real. The city outside bustled with life, but inside their small world, peace was beginning to bloom. He showed her the power of patience and kindness, teaching her that forgiveness starts with oneself. And she learned that asking for help was not weakness but strength. Together they carved out a new life. One built on honesty, resilience, and a shared hope for the future. The journey was far from over, but with each passing day the past's grip loosened. That faded photo, once a symbol of lost youth, now shone with the light of second chances. And in the quiet moments when the world seemed still, two hearts beat together, ready to face whatever came next. The days grew longer, and with each sunrise, the woman found a new strength stirring inside her. The man watched this transformation with a quiet pride, amazed at the resilience she displayed despite the darkness that once consumed her. They were no longer strangers bound by a forgotten past, but two people rebuilding a fragile future together. One afternoon he invited her to a small cafe tucked away in a quiet part of the city. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air as they sat across from each other, the noise of chatter and clinking cups creating a comforting backdrop. She smiled, something genuine and light, the kind he hadn't seen in years. Do you remember this place? He asked, tracing the rim of his cup with a finger. It was one of our favorite spots years ago. She nodded slowly, memories washing over her like a gentle tide. I almost forgot how it felt to just sit and enjoy something simple. He reached out and took her hand, warm and steady. There's more to life than the hardships you faced. You deserve joy, peace, and love. She looked down at their joined hands, feeling the weight of those words settle in her heart. For so long she had believed happiness was something she was not meant to have. But now hope was no longer a distant dream, it was something she could reach for. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet moments of rebuilding. Small victories like finding a new job that offered not just income but dignity, reconnecting with estranged family members and rediscovering old passions she thought lost forever. But healing was not a straight path. One evening as they walked through a park lined with golden autumn leaves, she stopped suddenly, her eyes clouded with doubt. "What if this is just a moment?" she whispered. "What if everything falls apart again?" He pulled her close, the crisp air wrapping around them. "Life is fragile," he admitted. "But that's why it's worth fighting for. I won't give up on you, on us." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they were different. Not just of sorrow but of release. She realized that fear would always be there, lurking in the shadows, but it no longer controlled her. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the modest apartment they now shared. It was from a charity organization, offering her a spot in a training program designed to help people rebuild their lives after hardship. She read the letter aloud, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and disbelief. "This could change everything," she said softly. He smiled, the pride in his eyes unmistakable. "You've earned this chance. And I'll be here every step of the way." That night they sat by the window watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. The past was still a shadow behind them, but the future shimmered with possibility. She held the faded photo once more, but this time it felt different. Not a reminder of what was lost, but a symbol of how far she had come. In the quiet of that moment, two hearts beat in unison, stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever the world would bring. They had survived the storm, and now together they could finally breathe. The crisp autumn air carried a quiet promise as they stepped out together, the city bustling around them but somehow feeling smaller, more intimate. The woman's steps were steadier now, each one filled with purpose she hadn't known she still possessed. Beside her, the man walked with a calm assurance, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Their days became filled with new routines. Early morning coffee at the same cafe, evening walks through quiet neighborhoods, and long conversations that stretched into the night. She discovered the power of small moments, the kind of simple happiness that had once seemed impossible. One morning she received a call from the training program. They had accepted her into an advanced course designed to open doors to real career opportunities. Her heart fluttered with excitement and fear. "This is it," she told him softly. "A chance to change everything." He smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "You're ready. I've always known that." The course was demanding, pushing her to relearn skills and face fears that had buried themselves deep in her mind. Some days were harder than others, but with his quiet support and her own growing determination, she kept moving forward. One evening, after a particularly tough day, she confided in him. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm really ready for this, or if I'm just afraid of failing again." He took her hand and looked deeply into her eyes. "Fear is part of the journey. It's okay to be scared. What matters is that you don't let it stop you." Her tears came, but they were not of weakness. They were the release of years of pain and doubt, replaced now by hope and courage. As the weeks passed, she grew stronger, learning not just new skills but how to trust herself again. The man saw the transformation with awe. The woman who had once been invisible was now shining with a quiet confidence. One day she was invited to an interview for a position that could change her life. A job in a company that valued her talents and gave her a fresh start. She prepared carefully, practicing answers and smoothing out fears that threatened to hold her back. The night before they sat together, the weight of the moment pressing on them both. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he said gently, "you've already won by coming this far." She smiled, the warmth of his words wrapping around her like a shield. "Thank you for never giving up on me." The interview went well. She answered questions with honesty and strength, her story shining through in every word. When the call came offering her the job, tears of joy streamed down her face. The man held her tightly, sharing in the triumph that was more than just professional success. It was the victory of hope, resilience, and love reclaimed. That night, they celebrated quietly in their small apartment. The faded photo sat on the windowsill, now framed, a testament to the journey they had traveled together. She whispered, "We've come so far." He nodded. "And this is just the beginning." Outside, the city lights twinkled, a reminder that even in the darkest places, light could find its way in. Together they faced the future, no longer haunted by the past but strengthened by it, ready to build a life filled with promise and peace. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room where they sat side by side. It was a quiet moment, but it held the weight of everything they had been through. The lost years, the pain, the courage, and now hope. She reached over and touched the framed photo on the table. "This picture," she said softly, "it feels like a symbol of all the chapters we've written. From heartbreak to healing." He smiled, his eyes reflecting the journey they had shared. "It reminds me that even when life seemed impossible, love was never really gone." Their life had changed in ways neither could have imagined. The job she had fought so hard for had opened doors to stability and pride. She had reconnected with family members who had thought she was lost forever, mending old wounds with patience and understanding. The man too had changed. He wasn't just a billionaire anymore, he was someone who had learned humility, compassion, and the true meaning of strength. His world of power had expanded to include vulnerability, and in doing so he found a deeper happiness than money could buy. One evening, as the city skyline blazed with lights, he surprised her with a small garden on the rooftop of their building. It was simple but beautiful, filled with blooming flowers, soft lights, and a bench where they could sit and watch the stars. "This is for you," he said, taking her hand. "A place to grow just like you have." Tears welled in her eyes as she took in the gesture. "It means more than you know." They sat together, the world below them bustling, but up here time seemed to slow. The past was still a shadow, but it no longer controlled them. "I want to thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, really seeing me when I thought no one would." He squeezed her hand gently. "I never stopped seeing you. You've always been in my heart." Their love was no longer just a memory or a photo. It was alive, breathing, and full of promise. They had survived the storm, found each other again, and built a life from the ashes. In the days that followed, they gave back, supporting others who faced hardship, sharing their story to inspire hope. Their journey became a beacon for those who believed in second chances. The woman, once homeless and forgotten, now stood tall with confidence and grace. The man, once distant and consumed by success, had found a purpose greater than wealth, the power to heal and be healed. And as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, they held each other close, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and deeply in love. Their story was a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome, to forgive, and to love again. A reminder that sometimes, the greatest treasures are found not in riches, but in the hearts we choose to hold.